and welcome once again to Informally Formal. Today we bring to you a principal energy specialist from Asian Development Bank from Manila in Philippines. It's a great delight to bring Sohail Hasnie. Let me just give you a brief background. Sohail graduated from PUIC, my alma mater as well. And then he also has Master's in Engineering from Asian Institute of Technology, also has an MBA from University of Melbourne, has done a lot of certification and stuff from University of Cambridge and elsewhere. So in a nutshell, a very, very well qualified individual. A very warm welcome to you, Sohail. Welcome to our show.
Thank you very much. Very glad to be here.
Fantastic. Over the last few years, he's been focusing all his energy and expertise in the renewable space. I read his blogs and he's very active on LinkedIn. So the first one that I guess the first topic would be solar power and batteries. Okay, so we read about, how solar power is becoming cheaper and cheaper. And then of course, batteries, the capacity and all that stuff. So I'm novice in this area. So Sohail, I guess my first question to you is, we all hear that solar power is getting cheaper and batteries are following similar trends. So can you give us a context where things you think are headed? Over to you, Sohail.
Thank you very much. We all have seen a solar panel. No, that's about a meter high standard. That panel in 1977 was almost $7,000.
Wow.
So obviously it was not for anybody's use.
Right.
Today that panel is, guess how much it is? It has dropped dramatically. By 2009, that was about close to $85.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Okay.
So it's like a $8.50, and in 2013, it came down again. Right now, I believe you can get it for $30.
Oh my God.
So what has happened though, early days, people used to put a solar panel and said, okay, I'll track the sun, where it goes. But right now people say, I might as well put 3 sets, one looking at the morning sun, setting sun, mid sun, because it's so cheap. It's almost becoming cheap and cheap. So what has happened at the same time, like in Bangladesh, I guess electricity tariff will be what, about 6 taka per kilowatt hour? So about say 10 cents roughly. Old days when it was $73, of course, a generation through solar was very, very expensive. I did a project in Mongolia in 2001. Solar at that time was very expensive. 20 years later, today, solar is competing head on with all sorts of fossil fuel. In many countries now, solar is cheaper than building a new coal plant, definitely. So it has fundamentally changed. And one fundamental thing also happened. Solar, of course, the problem is you cannot have a solar powered torchlight. There's no value, right? Because you need the torchlight at night and the sun is gone. So solar had been treadling along on its own, basically picking up some load during the day because the storage was very expensive. Now the battery price in the last 10 years have fallen from almost $2,000 a kilowatt hour to today about $176 a kilowatt hour. So this marriage, solar and batteries, your ability to generate electricity and your ability to store for evening use, that's revolutionary and that's changing everything. And I get very excited about that, and that keeps me awake at night.
Right. So hey, let me understand what you're trying to say. First, of course, you pointed out that the price of solar has come down drastically. Like I said, it's almost like Moore's law in reverse, right? Has come down drastically. So it's become a lot more affordable. It's very competitive with traditional fossil fuel, traditional power plants that we used to see. It's very competitive. As a matter of fact, I believe in some cases even cheaper. Like we have
It is
seen
cheaper.
some projects in India in particular that are just absolutely mind-boggling as to how inexpensive. But that's one. And the other thing that I believe, just so my audience understands what you're saying, is the other challenge that comes with solar is, the storage part of it. And now you're saying the battery prices are coming down drastically as well. So now this marriage is making this whole thing very, very competitive and lucrative, right? Let me just ask you before you, I mean, if we want to hear from you, of course, but what role would you say, tell our audience also, what role do you think Elon Musk played in this whole thing?
When Elon Musk, he has a solar company, and that started putting a solar on a roof tiles. That is coming in a very big way. But what Elon Musk fundamentally did through the power wall, actually, I blogged at that time saying this is like a Neil Armstrong footprint, but a big leap for mankind, because Elon Musk changed or broke the mindset we had. He put a very large battery. This is the power wall, which is about the size of 65-inch television. You put it on the wall, on your outside door, and then solar gets stored in that battery, and then you can, it came with a built-in inverter, so that basically you could run your entire household from that battery. That's what did the power wall. But what he did though, he basically cracked two paradigms we have. As all engineers, we have been taught that the difference between water and electricity is electricity cannot be stored. Supply and demand has to be met at the same time.
Right.
So that was the fundamental things, that electricity cannot be stored, and electricity gets generated far away. It comes through distribution, transmission line, through your meter, and that's what you use. And that's what Elon Musk showed, that with solar, you can not only generate rooftop solar, because he come up with the technology also, small tiles that you can put on your roof. It was already there. He promoted it a bit more, and then allowed to store it on a large scale that you could basically disconnect from the grid.
Let me then ask you, Sohail, what do you think, how far are we from consumers? It going mainstream where consumers are utilizing this. How far do you think we are from that?
I mean, it depends where you are. Like if you go to Hawaii or anywhere in Australia, almost every alternate households have rooftop solar. Government gave, right now, Australian government give incentives, especially in South Australia, to install batteries. The government is targeting tens of thousands of batteries getting into homes. So depend where you go. Most countries where tariffs are high, where people are early adopters, solar is coming in a very big way, to the point that, again, in Australia, even in California, during daytime, the whole system demand, that means the electricity that you want from the system, is becoming almost very low, because everybody got their own solar running. So it's very difficult for power companies, because suddenly daytime all the customers are gone.
Right, exactly. Now, I'm sure you're aware of ITCOL in Bangladesh. ITCOL in Bangladesh is one of the fastest as far as small rural, not urban, not in the urban area as much, but in the rural areas, one of the fastest in the world, by the way, in terms of penetration of small, solar panels, that is maybe just one radio, couple of lights, and so on. I mean, I don't know the exact specifications, but Sohail, you'd probably know better. So Bangladesh is in the forefront, really, in terms of, as far as rural electrification, is one of the fastest, I believe.
Well, yes and no.
Okay.
Yes, because Bangladesh, through ITCOL, as you correctly said, they connected millions of households to give access to them to electricity, and it was even mentioned in Al Gore's one of the famous speeches. But what they did though, they put a small solar panel, maybe this size, maybe a bit bigger, 20 to 30 watt, And the target was to basically provide them with lighting and a radio. And it was an interim solution until the grid comes in. But right now, many countries are doing, I actually doing a project in Afghanistan, and our target is to eventually electrify 500,000 people that way. So we are giving a larger solar panel, a television, a fridge, and everything in the package, so that they will not be waiting for the grid. So it called deed was perfect at that time, but right now the technology has moved on. Batteries have become, it called use lead acid batteries because that was the only choice at that time. Now lithium batteries are coming in, you know, the batteries that get into your electric car, in your mobile phone. So that fundamentally changing. So there is a huge opportunity, if you ask me, in Bangladesh to promote what it calls starting in a bigger way, but this time maybe trying to bring in other appliances because people's need for energy technology has changed. Before it was fundamentally, I just need a light, but right now people say, well, I need a TV, I need a bit of cooling. It would be nice to be able to run a rice cooker. It would be nice to be able to run a little drill machine or even an electric bicycle, you know, so the needs have grown.
Sure. Let me ask you then, Sohail, how can young entrepreneurs then you believe can take advantage of these incoming changes that you're talking about?
Well, I mean, changes are already here. I think what fundamentally the young entrepreneurs can do and must do, because all these changes are also bringing in a concept, what is called stranded assets. So if you are a local community, and if you have invested long distribution power lines, few households to connect, and tomorrow those households gets electrified, no one may be using your lines. People might get disconnected, and then asset becomes stranded. It's like building a road that no one is using. So young entrepreneurs need to challenge anything and everything, every fundamental assumptions are there. You have to think like a Bangladesh, a small household, maybe consume electricity 2-3 kilowatt hour a day. Western average is almost 15-20 kilowatt hour a day because there are a lot of air conditioning, heating involved. So if you're doing on a 5 kilowatt hour, and if you use super efficient appliances, you know, old light bulb used to 100 watt, now with LED you can do it maybe 7 watt. So those things changes will come. So young entrepreneurs, what they can do, they can, when they are designing a system, they should not look at today's technology. They have to take few steps ahead and said, okay, in 5 years' time, looking back, what technology do we need? It's like, you know what the concept is, leapfrogging. You go from today's technology to yesterday's technology, bypass today's technology, go to tomorrow's technology. So I think young entrepreneur must look at leapfrogging. Look at world's best practices, what's happening, how can I bring in the technology of tomorrow, not yesterday's or today's, because the world is moving very fast.
Right, absolutely. So that automatically leads me to asking the question, Sohail, is how do you suppose then the country, Bangladesh, how could we, the country, take advantage of these changes that are afoot?
Bangladesh, of course, the hotspot for climate change.
Yeah,
ultimately, a lot of people, there will be climate refugees. Ultimately, I don't think if some of the lower areas goes down water, that's the forecast, is a lot of people have to move north and eventually may have to leave the country. So it's quite sad. So there's a lot of global awareness on that factor for Bangladesh, and also how the globally the funds can help Bangladesh into meeting its climate adaptation targets. So meaning, how do we adapt to this life cycle? Can we do floating houses? Why can't we do floating villages? Why can't we do this and that? While the government or people go into this discussion, and when you open books, then you say, oh my God, Bangladesh electricity is all fossil fuel. It's either coal or oil, diesel. So, and then Bangladesh has all those gasoline cars. So I think government, people, entrepreneurs need to take a step back and said, how can we do things differently? So for Bangladesh, electric vehicle will be a big thing to go, because Bangladesh imports all of its oil and it goes into sitting on a traffic jam. And when you're an electric car, you don't consume any electricity. So that's one. I think the electric vehicle and things will be very important. It would be very important also to invest potentially batteries into homes, also into distribution systems. That way you can improve the reliability. But overall, it's sad to see that Bangladesh doesn't have a very high penetration of solar panels, like all government offices, all floating areas, water surfaces. I mean, all the paved roads, the sidelines, pedestrian that they're waiting for buses, all those things should be solar because solar is so cheap. Someone needs to aggregate this demand, whether it's a government or EatCall or a private sector. Because Bangladesh needs to improve its renewable energy target. I know Bangladesh is doing a lot in terms of solar irrigation in rural areas. I mean, you can get rid of all the old diesel pump, turn them into electric motors. I mean, there's tons and tons of opportunity. But again, as I said, the principle should be don't look at today's technology or yesterday's technology, bring in tomorrow's technology. That leapfrogging is very important.
Right. Sohail, I must also add though, with all these advancement in where the prices are coming down and advancement in technologies, that's all well and good. But then at the same time, solar does require space. So if you want to do a solar farm, I do agree with you that, you know, official government buildings and every nook and cranny that is available that could be utilized. So that calls for some demand aggregation, right? But large scale solar farms is rather difficult in a place like Bangladesh that is so land scarce. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes and no, because what happened, the Bangladesh residential consumption is quite low because unlike other part of Asia, either it's very hot, that means everyone needs air conditioning, or it's a freezing cold. The countries that I cover in Central Asia, you need continuous heating. Bangladesh being in the 23-degree latitude, you are neither cold nor hot. So the energy demand is, even per capita consumption wise, is very low. So rooftop solar, other than in a large multi-story building, should be able to meet a lot of those needs, especially rural areas. But again, if the industry we are talking about, large industry, yes, it will need, you will need plants, but Bangladesh also don't have super power hungry 500 megawatt aluminum smelters or something. So I think someone need to look at it. Again, as I qualified before, I know quite a little relative to many of your listeners about Bangladesh power situation. But I would still say that solar opportunities has not been fully tapped. Still a long way to go before we hit that constraint saying, sorry, we don't want to take our arable land to go into solar.
Sure, sure. So now we are almost at the tail end, Sohail. You know, when you're talking about interesting subjects, time kind of flies. In any event, for our audiences, under a couple of minutes, if you would summarize, what is it that you're trying to say to our audience in terms of solar and batteries, please?
Yeah, in summary is that the world of yesterday is not going to define the world of tomorrow. The world is changing very fast, and those fast changes are not going to trickle down 5 or 7 years. When I grew up in Dhaka, something happened in US, we knew it will come to Bangladesh in 7 years' time. It's now coming instantly. So I think it's very important that whoever wants to do anything, whether it's a policy, technology, planning, entrepreneurship, you have to mainstream yourself to the mainstream thinking, look after tomorrow's thinking, apply to today's circumstances, and make the best technology decision, because technology is going to define who we are tomorrow. And one fundamental principle, human being far too long look down for energy under the ground when our back has been burning in the sun. It's about time we look up and catch the sun.
That was such a pleasure to have you. I thank you so very much for your time, Sohail. And I would like to thank our audience for joining us for this very exciting and very informative session. So
lovely. I mean, Really love to join here. Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
Absolutely. What a pleasure. So stay safe, everyone. Hope you catch us for our next session. And with that, I sign off. Bye-bye.